I'm delighted to welcome today Tony Courtney Brown from the Total Body Health Clinic in Wimbledon. Welcome, Tony.
Good morning, Elaine. Thank you.
Lovely to have you with us today. So the Total Body Health Clinic is in Wimbledon, and I know you have a variety of different modalities that you use to help people with the health and well-being, both in terms of proactive and reactive. So if they've got something wrong, you can help them deal with it. But also I know that you're interested in helping people to avoid nasties in the first place. So could you just run us through the types of tools and resources that you have? You've got some really key, fantastic tools that I'm sure some people have never even heard of. So I don't know where to start, but I'll leave that in your hands.
Okay, right. I'll start with the first one, which is bioresonance, which, if people haven't heard of it, it's a way of healing without drugs, which uses the principles of quantum physics. Now, without getting too far into the science, it means that everybody and everything vibrates. And when we're well, we're vibrating at the right frequency. Mm-hmm. When we're not, we're not. It also means that when we meet people, for instance, and we say we're on the same wavelength, mm-hmm. It's the similar principle. We're on the same frequency. Now, when we're not well, what the bioresonance does is harmonize the frequencies to bring people back into sync and make them better. The next thing that we have is something called a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Now, normally when we breathe in about 24% oxygen. And when you go into the chamber, this boosts it to over 90%. And what that does is clear out all the dead cells, rejuvenate the cells that you have. And it's useful for a wide range of conditions, ranging from serious illnesses through to just keeping people healthy. Allied to that, we have a light bed, which looks rather like a sunbed, and it's got 28,000 LED lamps in it. And that's a mixture of red, infrared, and blue lamps. And they all penetrate the body to different levels. So, for instance, the blue lamps will do things with your skin to heal up skin conditions. The reds will go further into your body if you've got aches and pains, and the infrared goes right through to your joints and muscles. Then we have a body scanner, which works on the principles of Chinese medicine. So you wear a pair of headphones, and in particular, these are linked to your left ear, which is where your meridians are. You're then scanned from head to toe, and you can see it happening on a computer screen, and it will show you which parts of your body are operating optimally and which ones might need some support. And just recently, we've got something called a heart rate variability monitor, which virtually checks your level of fitness. And then we can plot at each visit how you're progressing. And then finally, we wrap that up with nutritional advice. So we look at any allergies, food intolerances, and people's general lifestyle, how much sleep they get, how much stress they're under, and wrap it all up in Total Body Health.
Wow, that is absolutely phenomenal. And if I was starting from scratch, that everything that you've said, I would include it. That is just phenomenal. I've experienced most of those things that you've said. And how did you know about bringing all of these together?
It just popped into my head. It was a very strange thing. We started with bioresonance, and we'd gone to a natural health exhibition, and we'd seen lots of things there. And I was in the shower one day, a few months after, and I just thought, what are these oxygen things? I must research into them some more. So I did some research and thought, that looks really interesting, especially around the time of COVID and looking at respiratory disease and so on. And so I thought, I must look into that. We went to where they made them, had a look at them, tried them out, and thought, that's really good. We'll have one of those. Then we saw a light bed with all the lamps in it as well. And we saw how there must be synergy between the two. And then thought, okay, if we fill somebody up with oxygen, which gives them more energy, and then put them in the light bed as well, that will have an exponential effect. And then when we saw the heart rate variability device as well, we thought, well, what you could do is plot somebody's progress from when they start at each subsequent visit. So both they and we can see the progress that they're making and tweak and amend the therapy accordingly. And then obviously, I've experienced lots of health issues and realized that some of that's down to what I've been eating or not eating, vitamin deficiency, mineral deficiency, allergies, which I wasn't aware of, and food sensitivities. So then started to go into that in depth as well. And with the devices that we have, it picks up what your allergies and food intolerances are and your mineral and vitamin deficiencies. So then bringing it all together, it means that we can address people's health issues from a number of different perspectives.
Absolutely, and from the inside out. So I'm a great believer in it's all very well, you know, knowing about nutrition and diet and lifestyle, but when people actually see the reports and can see for themselves what's happening inside their body, it's a game changer, isn't it? Absolute game changer.
It is, yes.
So you were saying we. Who's we?
Myself and my wife.
Lovely, brilliant, brilliant. So bioresonance, I use a bioresonance device daily. HBOT, the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, when I had stage 4 cancer 6 years ago, that was part of my strategy. And to this day, I recommend people with any condition. As you'll know, the muscular, what's it called? Sclerosis, Multiple Sclerosis Society has charities all over the UK, and they offer that. So yes, I use that, and it's very obvious. I used to see people going in wheelchairs into the chamber and walking out. I mean, it's really phenomenal when you flood your body with oxygen. And the heart rate variability, I used to have, well, in fact, I still have it. I don't use it now, but I used to run a cardiovascular health clinics over 10 years ago. And the heart rate variability, again, when people can see what their heart is doing and how hard their heart is having to pump the blood around their body. And then, so if you've got the oxygen flooding in, that's going to help the flow of blood and so on and so forth. It's fascinating, and the scanners, the light beds, all this sort of stuff. I'll take my hat off to you, Tony. You've got a really awesome combination. They're really, really good. So how did you get, you know, you had an epiphany, an aha moment in the shower, which is where I get mine as well, actually. When I'm in the shower, it's kind of a form of active meditating. You get these light bulb moments. So your light bulb moment has brought this all together, but let's trace where you've come from. You mentioned that you had health issues and challenges and so on. Without exception, everybody I have interviewed who's into the health and wellness arena now, every single one of us, myself included, we've all got to where we are now through our experiences. And to me, that's really powerful, because you can speak with total authenticity and support, because you know what people are going through, because you've been there yourself. But your story is not quite the average that of people that I've interviewed before. You've got way more depth to your story, and it's really quite remarkable how you're kind of sitting where you're sitting, doing the wonderful work you're doing, and you're still a spring chicken. So many years ahead to help people. So I'm not sure where to ask you to start, because your story has got a lot to it. So again, over to you.
Right. Start at the beginning, I think. My parents are Jamaican, and they of the Windrush generation. They came over here in the 50s, but they couldn't look after me when I appeared, when I was born, as my mother was a nurse and my father was still at university. So as a result of that, I was fostered soon after birth, went through a series of foster parents, and ended up with some Dutch people from what I hear, from when I was about 10 months old, and then stayed with them. And they to me and my foster brothers who were there with them were my family. And it was a really loving family. And we lived on a flower nursery. And my first memories are, I must have been about 2 or 3, and the flowers must have come up to about here on me. And it was just acres and acres of flowers, tulips, daffodils and crocuses. And it was idyllic. When I was 6, however, I was returned to my birth parents, who I really didn't know at all. And it was a real traumatic shock to the system. It was a complete culture clash. I didn't know who they were. They didn't know who I was. They were not happy with the way that I'd been brought up by the Dutch people. And it was a very difficult time. Also, my parents' marriage didn't work. They were very violent to each other and very violent to me. So it was a complete reversal of what I'd been used to. And my father in particular had a belt that he would hang up outside in the corridor. And whenever I'd done anything wrong, from going out to play or having dirty shoes, or sometimes I didn't even know what I'd done wrong, but I'd be sent to bed and told you're going to get a good hiding in the morning. And so I'd lie awake most of the night, stressed, and then I'd get a good hiding in the morning, and then I'd be told what I'd been given the beating for, which was usually some minor infringement. So that was really quite difficult. Fortuitously, though, then my father hit upon an idea of setting up a charter business, chartering planes to and from the West Indies. And as a result of that, made a lot of money very quickly. Then what happened is I took the 11 plus and failed. And my dad went absolutely berserk. He actually went round to the headmaster of my primary school's house and bawled him out. And he said, how could my son fail this? And the headmaster said, well, and this is how words affect you forever. He said, he's bright, but not intelligent. Now, my father then came home, gave me another thrashing for that. And, but the headmaster said, look, there aren't many options available. He's either going to go to the secondary modern or you can pay for him to go somewhere else. And I said, I don't care, I can pay, I'll pay. So luckily, I got sent off to boarding school. And for me, that was bliss. It meant getting away from the chaotic home environment, getting away from the beatings, but then some new challenges. I was the only black kid in the school, and also I'd grown up with Dutch foster parents. We'd lived in Bristol in the West Country, and then I'd been brought up by my Jamaican parents. So my accent was something that maybe wasn't too clear to most of the kids at that school with that kind of upbringing. And also because I looked different, then I got pilloried for that as well. So then I saw one of the guys there who I thought was really well spoken, and so I imitated him. And I followed everything that he did, listened to how he spoke, and that's how I speak now, which was something that I just learned from that guy. The interesting thing about going to that school too was I hadn't learned French and I hadn't learned Latin, and I had 2 years in which to learn everything to get up to the standard the rest of the kids. They let me off Latin, but I had to learn French very quickly. But also I found I was very good at English. And again, through shadowing this chap and listening to how he spoke and how he wrote and so on, I then ended up vying for top position in English with him in the class. I then went off to the next school, an independent boarding school. And the first year there, I won 3 prizes for English, ancient history, and geography. But I was still behind on maths and chemistry, never any good at those. Then the next year, everything sort of fell apart. I'm not quite sure how it occurred, but I lost my motivation. I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, and I was sent to the school's sanatorium. which was literally a building away from the rest of the kids where they put sick people. And I was put in there and they sent a doctor to see me who diagnosed me with depression. By this time I was 14, 15. And so I was then started on antidepressants. And I stayed on those for the next 45 years till I was 60. So that was the start of it. I left school, still with a lot of stuff going on in my head, trying to find out who I was and so on, and ended up doing a psychology degree at what was then called the North East London Polytechnic. Now, although I was good at English, I was rubbish at maths. And what I hadn't realized is I'd signed up for a BSc rather than a BA. And this course had an unseen 3-hour statistics paper at the end of it, which I hadn't quite realized when I signed up for it. Anyway, I managed to get through that, still on all the antidepressants, and I specialized in clinical and social psychology. And again, that was, well, all the clinical stuff. What are these pills doing to me? I want to read about it, find out about it. Left college with a degree eventually and thought, oh, that'll get me a job and then I'll be able to get sorted out. But instead, I ended up homeless and jobless. Luckily, I met a bunch of other homeless people and we set up a sort of hippie commune in the East End of London, and got some houses from the council, fixed those up and lived an idyllic life again for a while. Then I went to sign on one day and they said, we've got a job for you, the other side of the counter. So then I became a clerk in the Dole office. Then I got a job with a voluntary organisation advising homeless people using my experience of homelessness, and then eventually got a job with the council as a housing officer. Then I think I started to become very frustrated when I saw how the system worked as a housing officer. And I saw what decisions the bosses were making. And then I saw how people lived on the estates, and I knew about my own experience being homeless. And I thought, this is nuts. These people don't know what they're doing. And I just thought, I can do this better. I'm going to get into one of those jobs as soon as. So I put my head down and worked very hard. And from the age of 26 to 34, I went through a range of councils and positions. I went from housing officer to director at 34, where I was managing over 20,000 properties, 500 staff, and a number of politicians who were extremely difficult to deal with. Then, all the time throughout this period, I was taking antidepressants, more and more and more of them. They'd also introduced electroconvulsive therapy because they said I had a particularly resistant form of depression. So the doses were going up. Then I would frequently go and have my head fried with the ECT. Along the way, I'd met somebody, got married, and we'd had a child. And it's interesting joining the dots looking backwards, because then you can see the patterns much easier. And all I'd done is recreated my parents' marriage. Disaster. Not surprising, but that's what happened. So then we ended up getting divorced, and I lost 90% of everything in that divorce. And when I complained about it, the judge just said, if you don't shut up, I'll have you taken down. My solicitor just said, let it go. So it's time to start again. At the same time, I got called into the chief exec's office. And he said, look, there's no right or wrong way to say this. They want you out. So just like that, I'd lost my job as well and everything. So I was back to being homeless and jobless again. I managed to rent a small flat for a while, and I met somebody who gave me a job in their nursery as a play care worker. So then I spent my days taking the kids to school, getting their breakfast and tea ready, and wiping up their accidents, which is quite similar to working with politicians. It was the same kind of mess, really. And I thought, well, this is interesting, but I can't do this forever. And then an idea came to me about doing interim work. And I thought, why not use what I've learned in housing? And off I went as an interim, going around the country advising different housing authorities and organisations on their policies and strategies. All the time, increasing the amount of antidepressants that I was taking, and then also the number of electroconvulsive therapy sessions became more frequent. And no matter where I was in the country, I was having to come back to London to have more ECT sessions. Then what happened was everything kind of fell apart. I'd come back to London, I'd got myself a permanent job, I'd met somebody on my travels who'd moved in with me. But then came 2008-9 and the crash, and all the contracts dried up. So the bills piled up, including the repossession notices, and I went back down the plug hole again. I ended up in a bath with 2 bottles of wine, I think it was 2 to start with, and just about every antidepressant I could find in the house, and I just took the lot. It was also around that time that the relationship ended too, and that just tipped me over the edge. So having taken all this stuff, I thought it was a belt and braces job. I thought that what would happen was the pills and the drink would just knock me out and finish me off. And if that didn't happen, well, I was in the bath, so then I'd sink underwater, and that would make absolutely sure that it was done. However, I came round and found myself in a locked ward in a mental hospital. To this day, I have no idea how I got there. I didn't have any clothes. I had, you know, one of those hospital gowns with my backside hanging out the back of it. And I was there, it must have been for about 3 weeks. I don't know for sure. Every day I was just dosed up more and more. Every couple of days, it seemed I was taken down the hall and given more brain frying with the ECT. And I really didn't know how on earth I was going to get out of there. I said, look, can I go home? I need to get some clothes and so on. Nope, you can't, because you don't have a responsible adult to look after you. Well, I didn't know who on earth to contact, but luckily they had a computer in the ward, and I was scrolling through Facebook, and I recognized a guy I was at school with 20 years ago. Well, I hadn't seen him for 20 years, and I just thought it's worth a try. So I messaged him and said, I know I haven't seen you for over 20 years, but could you come and spring me from a mental hospital?
Oh my word. We're laughing, but I mean, it's terrible, really, isn't it? But you have to keep, you know, see the light side of these things. So he sprung you out, did he?
He did, because I'd been sectioned and then locked in there. And so he came down, he drove down from Warwickshire to Harrow, which is where the hospital was. And he said, I'll look after him. I've known him from school days. And they let him take me out. So,
wow.
So no doubt.
What year were you in by this stage, Tony? What was the era? How many years ago?
This was Christmas 2011 when I tried to commit suicide. So it's just coming up to 10 years ago. Then I went back home, and they started to send what they called care workers to see me on a daily basis to make sure that I was taking the pills and doing what I should be doing. During this period, an old friend of mine who I'd worked with previously, who is now my wife, was ringing up to say, how are you? Can I come and see you? And I go, no, don't want anyone to come and see the state I'm in. I've just been sprung from a mental hospital. No. Anyway, she just turned up on the doorstep. So I couldn't really throw her out. And then we got together. Now, she also worked in local government, and then we decided that I would move to her house, would rent my house out before it was repossessed, and try and work out what to do next. Then we saw this property event being advertised, trading in property. We went along to that one weekend and ended up with a property coach who said, right, you should sell one of your houses and move out of London and go and invest in the north. I thought, okay, sounds like a good idea, let's do that. This coach was an amazing guy. He's an Australian, and he was really totally woo-woo. Now, on one hand, he'd send me all these sums to do, which is anathema to me, you know, to work out the rate of interest, rate of return, and so on. If you buy a house at this level, if you rent it out, then what, and so on. Did my head in totally, but managed to do it. But on the other hand, he said, look, I know that you're on these pills. Why don't you read some books? And he gave me a list of books to read by John DeMartini, Joe Vitale, Marissa Peer. And so I started reading all these things, and I thought, do you know what? This is a damn sight more interesting than property. But, we followed the property route anyway. Now, here's the interesting thing. We went up to Halifax to buy our first property. There were complications legally. Being a lawyer, you know all this stuff. Flying and creeping freeholds, which is stuff that you just didn't get in London. So we thought, well, this is really complicated. Should we go through with it or not? We thought, okay, we'll do it. But then I ended up on the floor, unable to wee. And my wife had to take me down to A&E, and they said, oh, it looks like you've got a prostate problem here. We're seeing you for some biopsies. Now, strangely, our property coach had said, I want you to go and see a friend of mine. He's a sports psychologist who practices kinesiology. And also something called, he wrote a book called The Gamma Mindset. So then it was using all his meditation and what he suggested after doing the kinesiology that changed things for me also. He told me to bring all the pills I had down to him, which I did. And then he tested through the muscle testing with the kinesiology in my arm. He said, your body doesn't want any of this stuff, so throw them all away. And I said, well, I can't, how am I going to live without them? Throw them away. And he said, I'll give you some vitamins and some minerals, which will help you. He said, you're going to have a difficult time. It's going to be uncomfortable, but you've got to get off these once and for all. So I said, okay. And he said, also, to help clear your system, go and get some colonic irrigation. Okay, so I ended up going to get some colonic irrigation as well. And the lady who was giving that to me said, well, look, you've got all these issues. Have you ever tried bioresonance? And I said, I don't know, what's that? Anyway, she explained, still didn't get it, but she sent me off to go and see this chap. And it was remarkable. And this was all around the same time as having the prostate scare. And when I went to see the consultant after having the first biopsy, he just said, I don't know what's happened, but it's stable, and I'm going to send you back to, GP, but come in for another biopsy. I went and had some more bioresonance, came back after the second biopsy. He said, look, here's the good news. You haven't got cancer, and I'm discharging you back to your GP for good. I went, well, that's a result. Went back to the bioresonance guy and said, look, that's brilliant. Now listen, I've got sciatica, arthritis, and something else. Sciatica, arthritis, and a slip disc. Can you fix that too? Because I said, I'm taking all these pills for depression still, but I've just about got off those, but the pain is too much. And I said, I'm taking tramadol and gabapentin, and they keep pumping me full of this stuff. Can you fix that? And he did. And I threw those pills away as well. And I lost 2 stone. I went back to the gym. And now I'm off all the meds. And I said to the guy, this is brilliant. Get me one of these devices and teach me how to use it. So he did. And I said, thank you. I never want to go back on that stuff again. And so that was sort of how we got into it. And the money that we'd set aside to buy property didn't get used on that. We just bought more devices, and then the clinic. Now, it's another woo-woo story. Because of our property coach and what he told us to do, he said, learn to meditate, get into that as well. Okay. And then as a result of that, we ended up going on a weekend course to tune into your intuition. That's what it was all about. It was called Super Genius, run by a guy called Ryan Pinnock. I don't know if you've come across him.
No.
So went along to that, and we met a lady who just said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, we're sort of working out what we're doing, but we've just got a bioresonance device." And she said, "Oh, I've got a physiotherapy business in Wimbledon. I think that a lot of my clients would love what you're doing. You can have a room down there, come and set up." So we did, and then COVID hit. So then, although we'd moved down, we couldn't get the business going. So we moved back up to Halifax, and then just thought, you know what, let's just try and work out how to do this in Wimbledon. So we came back to Wimbledon and found our own premises, and have set up after getting all these other bits and pieces. So it's quite a strange and long journey, but a lot of it has just been ideas, the in the shower moments, and guidance from goodness knows where, saying, actually, this is what you should do. The very, very clear messages were, no, you're not doing property, you're going to do health. And to prove it, I'm going to make you even sicker.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. So what you were saying about all of us having gone through this is just so true. And that's what's brought us to where we are.
Yeah, it's fabulous. Absolutely. So you've gone, I've written down here, you've gone from Windrush to wellness.
Yes, oh, I love that.
That would be a fantastic title for your book. You must write a book one day if you haven't already started it.
I have started it, but I love that as a title. I think I may well have that. Wellness.
Yeah. From Windrush to wellness.
Love it.
Awesome. We're doing another book probably next year now. I did a collaboration. My PA said to me, you ought to write a book. And I couldn't be bothered at the time. This was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And I said, I don't mind writing a chapter, but a whole book at that stage was just too much. And anyway, long story short, we created a collaboration. I've got a Facebook group with nearly 4,000 people, all about wellness and well-being and being proactive and so on. It's called the Perfect Health Wellness Club. You won't find it because we've had to make it private because we started getting trolls in, because the more we talk about natural health, the more we get shut down. My Facebook group and my Facebook, well, the group as well, but the my personal profile has been, they call it shadow banned. When you look now, you hardly see anybody. I know people do see things because they tell me what they've seen, or they share things, whatever, but there's hardly any likes or comments or anything, and I used to get hundreds every day. So there's something not quite right there, which is why I've created my own private platform now, which gradually we'll be going on to. But we created this this book, and it was a collection of health stories, how people had gone from, a bit like your situation. And I can't remember how many authors we had, maybe 10 or 12, something like that. And we have #1 bestseller. So we've created now 3 #1 Amazon bestsellers, doing it through collaboration. But I still haven't written my whole story because there's just so much to it. I'm in my 60s, and then because we get to this age, and there's so much stuff that, and I think I've probably forgotten half of what I've been through. It's only every now and then you get a trigger memory that you think, oh yeah, I did that, and I've forgotten that I used to run cardiovascular health clinics until somebody said something the other day, and oh okay, yeah, yeah, I've been there, done that sort of thing. It's fascinating. So all of these devices that you have, they're all physically in your practice, and do you in your builder, so do you live and you work there, and everything's all self-contained then, is it?
The clinic's in a different building. We live in a flat nearby.
Right, okay, so you're on hand to see what's what. And do you and your wife actively kind of work with all the devices, or do you have practitioners that come in who specialize in each of the areas? How does that work?
We work in all the devices, and so we've had to have extensive training in bioresonance, which is just ongoing forever. And then we had to get a certificate to operate the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, to do the training for that. The light bed's not that difficult to operate, and also we've had to have training from a doctor for the heart rate variability monitor as well. So it's the only ones who work in this at the moment, but hopefully we'll be able to take people on at some point.
Excellent. with the heart rate variability, I was doing this, I don't know, probably 12 years ago, something like that, and it was really new woo-woo at that stage. And there's lots of devices now that can provide that service. But I remember teaching where I lived in Wiltshire. I actually got reported by a doctor, a cardiologist, who thought what I was doing was ridiculous. You know, how dare I? And, you know, he's a cardiologist and what do I know about anything? And, you know, my training and everything was in question. And because I was recommending a natural supplement, I had a visit from the, what do they call them? Trading standards, I think it was. So they bought, they had to buy, because that's what they do. You can't just give them something to test. So they bought a pot of the natural substance that I was recommending. They tested it in the laboratories, and they came back and reassured me that it was okay, which of course I knew because I was recommending it. And I was having clients that were coming off of themselves. They were taking themselves off of their heart medication, off of the statins, off of the beta blockers. And they were using the supplement plus diet and lifestyle changes and exercise and all that stuff as well. So there's no one size. You can't just press a button and everything's fine. And a lot of people don't realise that they actually have to work. They have to put some effort into it to fix themselves. And anyway, long story short, I spent many times since then meeting with this lovely gentleman, and he apologised to me. And it turns out he had a mental condition, which was undiagnosed. He was, well, I better not say the condition, because just in case anybody's listening and puts two and two together of I'm in Portugal now, but I don't want to cause any difficulties for anybody. But he was kind of on overdrive, shall we say, and was affronted by this, young whippersnapper that was, saying how people could help themselves naturally rather than the heart surgery and all this sort of thing. Anyway, I taught him about heart rate variability using the system that I was using, and he was fascinated. And I had many conversations with him in my kitchen about it. So you just never know. So, none of us knows all the answers, but we all know bits and pieces. And by sharing and collaborating, we can help so many people. And to me, it's such a privilege to be able to do that from personal experience, from training, and every day is a school day, isn't it?
I think what you've said there is so fascinating, because what's been strange is that we thought that we'd be hammered by medical people for this. And yet the first 4 people that called, 2 psychiatrists, a radiologist, and a pharmacist.
Wow.
And, we just thought these are not the people that we thought would be coming to us. But there seems to be, at the beginning, you talked about a wind of change and that things are changing. And I don't know, I'm hopeful that maybe this is part of it. I also spoke to a doctor friend who said that she's leaving the NHS and she's setting up a holistic clinic as well. She wants to do integrative medicine and says, I want to join with some of the holistic stuff and not just give prescriptions to people. I'm fed up of it. And she said, so many of my friends are in a similar position. And it just feels like things are changing. I hope I'm not being too optimistic, but it just feels like there is a shift away from the pill for an ill mentality.
Yes, I feel there's a significant change going on in the energy and the frequency of what's happening in the world today. And the realization that people need to look after their own health, that you can't outsource your health and well-being to a doctor, to anybody, to your family members. I spent a couple of years in the past answering calls on a cancer helpline. So I'd be taking calls as a volunteer from people who'd been newly diagnosed with cancer, or their families, friends, whatever, they wanted to help. And I found so many similarities, which is why I do what I now do, because I've had cancer, 4 different versions of cancer, 4 different episodes. I cured myself of a kidney disease I was born with, blah blah blah. So from personal experience, much as yourself, when you join the dots at the time, you think, oh, now what sort of thing. And I've been homeless as well, and in fact I'm technically homeless now, but my home is where I lay my hat. Wherever I am, I make home. but I'm definitely in transition at the moment. So it's the realization, getting the realization over to people that they cannot outsource their health. It's just not possible. And if they choose to do that, fine, but then you have to suffer the consequences. And every single drug has a side effect. And then they tell you, you know, read the label. Who reads the label? You take the pills. I bet you never read your labels, did you, of side effects and whatnot? I bet you didn't read them very often.
I did at one point, and that was part of the wake up. I was on these antidepressants, and of course, you look at what it says on the leaflet, may make you depressed and feel suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you giving me pills with
Yeah.
a side effect that
Yeah.
says will make me feel suicidal when you're giving me the pills to stop me feeling suicidal, and so on and so on? It's bonkers.
Yeah.
Bonkers.
Absolutely bonkers. Going back to your school days, I chuckled to myself when you were saying about copying how you speak with this chap. Did that chap ever know what you were doing?
No.
I wondered if he was going to be the guy that sprung you out of the mental place, but it was somebody different, was it?
It was someone different, yes.
Brilliant. It's so interesting how people come into our lives at certain times for certain reasons. There's something, is it people come into our lives for a reason, a season, or lifetime? And when we look back, we can see, you know, the seasonal people, the reason people, and so on and so forth. But like you, I'm finding so many more people on my wavelength that are just appearing, and the synchronicities are just mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And the important side of things, you know, the mindset. You mentioned John DeMartini. I met him a couple of years ago, and lots of people I'm always listening to YouTube videos, and Dr. Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza, and people who are just, you know, talk so much common sense to me. And although they're doctors, they're more kind of research doctors as opposed to medical doctors. And every single day I learn something and join another dot here and there. So it's fascinating. So what would be your advice, Tony, to anybody listening to this recording? What would your kind of top tips be for anybody who's, you know, maybe in the process of waking up to the realization about their health and well-being?
I think a lot of it is down to what you've said about taking responsibility yourself, and also researching what alternatives there are. I think what happens is that people are, because we're programmed from birth really to listen to the traditional medical model, to understand that, you know, this is the right thing to do and it's the only way to do it. And it's not necessarily. And also everybody's body is different. So when people are saying, you know, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to take, it's not necessarily so. If 100 people have a headache and you give them all an aspirin for it, it might fix it for some people. For others, it's going to make them more ill. And for others, it's not going to make any difference at all. And what people need to do is work out how their own bodies work. For instance, you get people who say, you know, the way to optimize your life is to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, that might work for some people. Other people have different body clocks, which start and will optimize at different times of the day. So not everybody has to get up at 5 o'clock. And if you don't, it doesn't mean you're going to be a failure. So it's working out what's best for you. And the other thing is that as you start to tune into your body more, your body will tell you what to do. It will tell you what it likes, what it doesn't like. It will tell you how much sleep it needs. It will tell you what foods it does and doesn't like. And I think it's taken me an awful long time, but I think that if we can teach people, kids in particular, younger, to trust their intuition more, learn that their gut feeling literally is the gut feeling, and follow that, I think that that will have a big impact on people. There's a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes, Kiyosaki.
Kiyosaki, where he explains very clearly that the education system has failed children in that it doesn't teach children about how to make a living and how to be financially independent. And I think that there's a corollary in health, whereas if we teach children similarly, this is how your body works. When you feel like this is what your body's telling you. And if we can teach them from an early age to go with that, rather than, you know, sometimes, you know, kids are saying, oh, I've got to tell me, oh, stop whining, shut up, eat. You know, if we listen to the kids and say, okay, so what do you want to do instead? Or how do you feel? Do you want to lie down? If we are more sensitive to what they're saying, then they will become more sensitive to how they're feeling. And that will help them an awful lot. And if we could combine the two, the sort of the financial training as well as the health training, then I think that will do kids a whole lot more good than what they're pumped with from an early age at the moment.
Absolutely. I'm always saying to people, follow your intuition. Your body will tell you, know your body, understand your body, know when it's not, you know, it's not happy. It will tell you, and then you can decide what to do, where to go. I would add another ingredient in there with the students. I first got trained in behavioural profiling over 25 years ago, and that goes through everything that I do. So I offer a variety of different testings, which is all based at home, rather than having a physical place now, which I've had in the past. So I offer health testing at home, which is a blood analysis, it's a hair analysis, so people can see what the mineral imbalances are. I have a metabolic analysis, gut health is coming on shortly, but a key thing in there is behaviour. So I have my own system that I've devised based on the DISC model of behavioural profiling. And the reason I was so interested in it was because my own profile, had I known about my behaviour when I was a student, I probably wouldn't have got myself into so much hot water, and I probably would have started a business maybe earlier. Instead of wasting 5 years, I walked out of school at 16 years old, or barely 16, and I just didn't turn up one day. I used to bunk off anyway. But if it wasn't for the sports field and all the activities I was doing, I used to bunk off to the local cemetery and wander around there because my family was known. I had to go somewhere that nobody would think of looking for me, so that's kind of how I got through school. But I started my first business, I think I was about 21, 22, something like that. And yeah, I was 22. And so the behaviour side of things, and the fact that I ask questions, I challenge. I'm not a very good role model for following rules. I like to know what the rules are, so I can then work out how to break them if it's a dumb, stupid rule in my view. So the behaviour side of things. So the reason I include that with what I do now is because, and it's the first thing I look at, I can then see from the behaviour pattern what the behaviour is of the person who's asked me to help them with their health, and I can show them categorically that they are ill now because of their behaviour. The way they've been behaving all their life has caused part of the problem. Obviously, this is just a tiny part of what happens in our life, but when we understand how a behaviour can either help us or get in the way, that it's remarkable, and it is a life changer. It's a game changer for some people. And I started, when I first got trained in behavioural profiling, I started working as an external consultant in schools, and I was teaching teachers how to understand the behaviours in the class for the children as young as kindy age as well. So I've got presentations I do with pictures of animals, and we talk about animal behaviour. And guaranteed, if you were to ask a child to choose one of the 4 animal pictures, they will resonate with the animal behaviour that resonates with them, the style they are. But there's so much that you can bring into things, and so the health and well-being. And I knew 25 years ago, as soon as I got introduced to behavioural profiling, it would be part and parcel of everything I do. So whether I was doing an interim management consultancy or chief executive of a law firm or whatever, all the things that I've done, behaviour is an integral part of it. And I'm now in discussions with somebody who wants to use my model, because I've got my own version that relates to health and well-being, so I can show people on a 17-page report that I've created about their health and well-being and how it's affected. And music to my ears when you mentioned students, because this person wants to use my system to work with students, university students, and everything now it's like our time has come. It's just the energy is just fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
I think you know, what you said about the behaviour is so important too. I was lucky enough to attend one of Dr. John Demartini's courses, and he did the breakthrough experience on me. He pulled me out in front of people and said, right, tell me someone who's really upset you in your life and why. I said, well, my ex-wife. Why? Well, she, you know, did this, that, and so on and so forth. And he said, so you've been running this story around in your head for how many years now? 20 years, and you're still upset about it. Yeah. You know, without saying you're an idiot, he made me go through all the benefits of having gone through that relationship. Starting with, you know, he said, well, come on, give me the first one. I said, I don't know. I said, okay, I'm not in that relationship anymore. Good. What else? Well, I'm less stressed. Good. What else? And he made me carry it on and on and on until I'd come up with about 50 reasons. And they said, right, now how do you feel about it? Well, I suppose I learned a lot from it. Yeah, and what else? Well, I suppose I ought to be grateful for it. Good. Now you learn. And again, it's the behavioural thing, because we grow up with these behaviours and models in our head, which are completely the wrong ones.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned the C word earlier on, conditioning. We're conditioned from birth. We're conditioned by social media, by the television, by friends, family, all around. And no end of people have said to me, oh, I had this treatment, I didn't want to, but I had it because my wife made me, or my daughter, you know, was worried that I wasn't going to live, and so on and so forth. People don't listen to themselves, their own inner voice, their intuition, etc. And it's just so important, so important. Anyway, we could talk for days, Tony. I can see that. It's been fascinating hearing how you've got to where you are today, and I wish you very well with the clinic, and I will definitely be referring people to you over in Wimbledon. So website details, contact details, how do people find you?
Right, website is www.total-body-health.com.
Right, okay. So total-body-health.com. Right, that's easy enough. So they can get hold of you and your wife there, look at all these systems. Presumably you've got them on the site, have you?
The website shows all the different devices. It talks about the science behind them, how they can help you, and it's got the phone number as well.
Brilliant. So Tony, Courtney Brown from the Total Body Health Clinic, thank you so much for your time today, and I'm sure we're going to be talking and featuring you again very soon.
Thank you, Elaine.